Welcome to Whole Being Health, Function, Vitality, and Mastery. So today we're going to be talking about spirituality, spiritual awakening. There's a lot of talks about spirituality and spiritual awakening. There's two different sciences, and this is going to be quite a technical kind of conversation. So as always, I try to make it quite simple. So some people watching this may find it quite simple. Some people might find it quite complex, depending on the level of learning. But I always try to make these things quite easy to understand. So first of all, there's two definitions of spirituality. There's the esoteric and exoteric. Esoteric are known as the greater mysteries. So the greater mysteries relate to things that are internally developed through introspection. Again, watch one of my videos on introspection. You'll find it's called What is Introspection? So I talk a lot about introspection. Introspection in simple terms is just kind of going inside yourself and connecting to your thoughts. So that's the esoteric side, where you go into the greater mysteries. An example of esoteric studies would be mysticism, such as Buddhism, as an example, where they go inwardly to themselves. Meditation is a form of esoteric teachings. Then the exoteric study would be what's known as the lesser mysteries. So religion would be classed as a exoteric practice, because what they're doing is they are expressing outwardly. The act of prayer is talking. It doesn't really matter how powerful the words are. The action itself is externalized. It's talking, it's communicating to something outwardly. Meditation is inward devotion and practice and stillness. So it's known as an inward development. There's a saying, if you don't go within, you go without. And what it basically means is, if you don't go inside yourself and communicate with who and what you are, then you go without a perfect life or balanced life, a life in flow and authentic life, and so on. So the first thing when it comes to spiritual awakening is the dream. What is your dream? Why are you here? If you can't answer that question, then you are not in a state of spiritual awakening. Because spiritual awakening means that you are alert and awake to what your life's purpose is. And when you are living your life's purpose, you are practicing your dream. Whatever you're doing is your passion and why you feel you are here, and also your legacy. So when you awaken, you are no longer in this state of isolation, because you have the awakening aspect and you have an isolation aspect to spiritual growth. Some people think that in order for them to become spiritually enlightened or spiritually awakened, they have to go into isolation. So you see people that go to temples, or they go off into the mountains and they go and become a hermit and they just focus inwardly. And that's the only way to the truth, by separating yourself from society. Those beings are beings that have incarnated here to kind of move to the next level of growth, which is just to leave their physical body behind. These people typically don't take care of their bodies. If you watch and see a lot of these people, they look quite unhealthy physically, because they have gotten to a point in their journeys, multiple lifetimes, where they no longer are really caring for the physical body, because they actually want to move on just to be light beings. So they focus on development of their light body. So you see a lot of these people looking emaciated, so they don't look like they're in good health. So those sort of people are typically the ones that go into this hermit mode and they go into isolation. That's not the only way to become spiritually awakened. You can become spiritually awakened by being connected rather than isolated. So when we say awakening versus isolation, you can be awakened through connection, because spirituality is about connection. You appreciate everything around you, all your space. Remember, every human on the planet is already connected. We all share the same air. We are all vibrating on frequencies. We are all light beings. So in that sense, we are all energy, so that we're all one. Some people say that because your DNA is constantly transforming, remember, you are made up of 99.9% empty space. Some people say that because your molecules change and your DNA changes and you grow a whole new body every single year, you could actually be swapping DNA with Siddhartha Gautama, known as the Buddha, or Jesus, or Sananda, or Horus in ancient Egypt. Or you could be sharing DNA with mass murderers, because you're constantly exchanging energy daily, and yearly you grow a whole new body. So you're interchanging, my point is you're interchanging with everything and everyone around you anyway. So the awakening aspect is connecting to everything and everyone, because once you connect to everything and everyone, you no longer feel alone. And if everyone connects to everything and everyone, you're all awakening, because you all realize you are, if you hurt someone, you're hurting yourself, because you're connected. Everyone is connected. The next point to understand is there are two forces in the universe. Those two forces are Yin and Yang, or Shen and Sham in ancient Egypt. And those forces are not negative or positive in terms of bad and good, but they are negative and positive polarities. So, as most of you are aware of, Yin and Yang is opposite expressions. So, good and bad, hot and cold, tall and short, thin and fat, health and unhealthy, awake and asleep. So everything in the universe breaks down into two things, and these two things are also expressive in terms of pursuit of pleasure and avoidance of pain. Again, two states or two forces. So part of spiritual awakening is making sure you balance your physical and spiritual, which is the yin and yang, and also balance your activity and rest, which is also yin and yang. So the spiritual person who's awakened is someone that appreciates and understands the physical and spiritual balance. Remember, when you incarnate here, you are a spiritual being having a physical experience. So the soul and the spirit are simply housed in the shell of the physical body as it carries you through the physical world before you leave to the next plane of awareness. So the spiritual you is having a physical journey. That's the polar opposites of yin and yang being expressed in human form. Remember, the physical body also is just light slowed down, matter slowed down to the point where it's solid. But it's still energy. It's just energy that is slowed down. The next thing to realize also is that when you're born, your ego is formed at birth, but it matures at the age of 21 if you are on the right path. So spiritual awakening is also having the ego mature. And the ego matures typically at 21 if you are doing the right things in your life, appreciating the world, focusing on meditation, other Tai Chi and vitality practices, eating foods that are self-sustaining, vital, organic, alkaline, life-giving foods, spending time in nature, grounding yourself, having a dream, focusing more on positive thoughts than negative, and so on. When you get to this point of transformation through your spiritual awakening, the ego then matures. And when the ego matures at the age of 21, then the I within you relates to the third chakra, which is what matures at 21 also. And when you are mature at that age of 21, then the third chakra ignites fully and is fully open. Now the third chakra relates to personal power, self-will, and living your legacy, which again ties into what I said at the start, your dream. So my point here is, when you get to the age of 21, you should know what your life purpose is. And what you find is most people around that sort of age kind of decide on a path in their life. They may, at 7 or 8 years old, say, I want to be a doctor. But then when they grow up, they may become a photographer or something. And it's typically around that age of 21 where they say, yep, I've kind of decided I'm going to do this in my life. So that's an indication of what happens at that point when you get that awareness. When there's a DNA explosion, maturity sets place and the ego formalizes itself and you figure out your life purpose. That again is another example of spiritual awakening. An interesting thing that also happens is when you incarnate here physically, as a child, when the baby takes its first breath, it goes from the vertical axis to the horizontal axis. that means it transforms from an energy state into a physical state. And once it's in that physical state and it takes its first breath, it's now on this side of reality. And once that happens, your vibrations slow down to become physical. So what you're supposed to do is do spiritual practices that open up your arusha or chakras, and then reignite you to connect upwardly to where you just came from. And again, that process normally starts to mature from the age of 21. Again, another example of spiritual awakening. There's a really great quote that Paul Chek, one of my coaches, expressed recently. Intellectualism is a cover-up for a direct experience. So let me say that again. Intellectualism is a cover-up for a direct experience. So what that basically means is, the more you think, and this is another saying that kind of helps to explain that, the more you think, the less you perceive. Perception is awareness. Thinking is structured pretty much from ideas, reading books, observation. But the more you read, the more ideas you have in your head, the more confused you can get. Think of someone that took up martial arts and they studied 17 different martial arts, and they all had a different way of throwing a kick. They may get confused, whereas there's beauty and simplicity. So when you are too intellectual and you overthink things, you lose the bigger picture. If you are trying to focus on throwing a ball into a net, and you're thinking, right, maybe if I shift this way and I shift that way and I move my hand, stop thinking. Just react and feel. Like Bruce Lee said, don't think, feel. So if you are too intellectualized about something, you don't appreciate that something as much. If you just let go and just feel what it's coming or communicating to you, you have more of a direct experience. Don't engage in the idea, engage in the practice. Because when you engage in the practice of something, you feel it far more than reading it. So one of the things I sometimes say to my clients is, if you read 100 books on martial arts and never practiced, would you know what it would be like to be a martial artist? No, because you have to engage in the practice. So intellectualism is a direct cover-up for a direct experience. I'll finish with this. Religion. Again, this is not an attack on religion, this is stating something. Religion itself is, how can I say? It's, the saying is, religion is a belief in someone else's experience. Spirituality is having your own experience. So a lot of people, they focus on the belief of something in a book, and they connect to the idea of the people in the book, but they don't engage in their own experience, which is why it's quite exoteric outward, because it's always about something outside. But spirituality is having your own experience. So now that I've said that, I'll say it again. Religion is an experience not directly related to you because of the fact that religion is a belief in somebody else's experience, whereas spirituality is having your own experience. So in order for you to create this spiritual awakening, it's about becoming more receptive and communicative, living your dream, practicing every single day to connect to your own thoughts, will, desire, actions, habits, and legacy. And then moving from that point and being guided by your higher self as to what your life purpose is and how to evolve that purpose. This is a deeper subject and we'll touch on it even more. I'll get more specific in some of my other videos, but this is kind of like an introduction to spiritual awakening. I hope that helps you and it makes some sense. Stay healthy, happy, whole, in whole being health.